By the time I reached the bridal suite, my lipstick was already on, my veil was pinned in place, and half the hallway outside the ballroom had turned to watch my sister lock me out of my own wedding room. "Don't just stand there, Chloe," Vanessa said through the half-open door, one hand braced against the frame as if she belonged there. "You're upsetting yourself for no reason." Behind her, I could see my dress hanging in the center of the suite. The train steamed and ready, my shoes laid out on the cream carpet, my makeup artist's case open on the vanity, and my mother sitting calmly by the window like this was a small misunderstanding instead of a public theft happening 40 minutes before my ceremony. The hotel coordinator stood 2 steps behind me, with a tablet pressed to her chest. My florist froze beside the wall, holding a box of white roses. One of my bridesmaids, Talia, looked from me to Vanessa and then down at the floor the way people do when they know something is wrong but are hoping they will not be asked to say it out loud. Vanessa smiled at me with my robe on her body. It was mine. Ivory silk, hand-embroidered at the cuff, with my new initials stitched inside in pale blue thread. "You can get dressed in the other room," she said. "This suite is quieter and I need a minute." "Need." I looked at her, then at my mother, then at the robe tied around my sister's waist so neatly that she had clearly been in front of that mirror for a while. The room behind her smelled like my perfume. "Your minute?" I asked. Vanessa gave a soft laugh for the audience. "Please don't do this dramatically. Today is hard for everyone." That line landed exactly the way she intended. Not cruel enough to sound cruel, just vague enough to make me look unstable if I reacted the wrong way. A few more guests had slowed at the end of the hallway. My future mother-in-law had just stepped out of the elevator. My wedding planner, Serena, appeared near the service doors, took one look at my face, and stopped walking. I kept my voice even. "Open the door fully, Vanessa." My mother rose from her chair inside the suite and came toward us with that composed expression she used when she had already decided what version of events she would later repeat. "Chloe," she said quietly, as if I were the one creating a scene, "your sister is helping. You're running behind and everyone is tense. You can use the hospitality room across the hall. It's larger anyway." I turned to her. "My dress is in there, and it will still be a dress in 5 minutes," she said. There were moments in life when humiliation did not come from being yelled at. It came from hearing your own mother say something small and practical while she stood inside a room you had paid for, next to a daughter wearing your robe, as if your place could be reassigned by tone alone. Vanessa widened the door just enough for me to see more of the suite. My jewelry case was open. My phone charger had been unplugged. My overnight bag had been moved from the sofa to the floor near the closet. Then I saw something else. On the table by the champagne bucket was a second bouquet. Not mine. Smaller. Cream roses with pale blush orchids. Bridal flowers. I looked back at Vanessa. She saw exactly where my eyes had gone and didn't bother hiding the flicker of satisfaction. "Why is there another bouquet in my suite?" I asked. My mother answered too quickly. "A delivery mistake." Serena had reached us by then. "No," she said, careful but firm. "The floral order was checked twice. There shouldn't be a second bridal arrangement on this floor." No one spoke. From inside the room came the soft rustle of fabric. My Aunt Denise stepped out from the dressing area, holding a white garment bag I had never seen before. She stopped dead when she realized the hallway had gone silent. It was not my dress bag. My sister turned slightly, enough to block the view, but not before I saw the beading. For one strange second, everything around me became painfully precise. The low hum of the air conditioning, the clink of glass from the ballroom downstairs, the hotel carpet under my heels, the shape of my mother's hand tightening over the door edge. Talia whispered, "Chloe." I raised my hand without looking at her. Vanessa's face changed first. Not guilt, not panic, calculation. Then she smiled again. "You're exhausted. You're seeing meaning in random things." I could have grabbed the door. I could have stepped forward and snatched the robe from her body in front of everyone. I could have demanded explanations loudly enough for the whole floor to hear. Instead, I turned to the hotel coordinator. "What name is on the reservation for this suite?" I asked. She blinked, caught off guard by the question. Miss Whitmore, the bridal suite is under. Please say it clearly. Her eyes moved briefly to my mother, then back to me. It's under Chloe Mercer. Paid in full ending in 4,412. My credit card. Something passed across Serena's face then. Something sharper than concern. She had been in enough weddings to know the difference between family chaos and prearranged displacement. Vanessa's fingers tightened on the door. I nodded once. Thank you. My mother stepped in. There is no reason to embarrass your sister over a room. A room? I repeated. No one answered. At the far end of the corridor, the elevator doors opened again. Two of Noah's groomsmen stepped out, laughing at something on a phone, then stopped when they saw us. One of them recognized me immediately and straightened. The other looked from Vanessa in the robe to me in my coat and veil, and understood enough to look uncomfortable. Public humiliation has its own geometry. It arranges people around you. It gives everyone a place to stand and something to pretend not to notice. I looked at my sister. Take off my robe. She laughed again, but there was strain in it now. You're being impossible. No, I said. I'm being precise. The hallway went still. Vanessa leaned closer, lowering her voice as though intimacy could soften what she was doing. You really want to start your marriage like this? With witnesses? That sentence told me more than she meant to reveal. Start your marriage. Not wedding day. Not mourning. Marriage. As if she had already moved one step beyond the suite. As if this was not about borrowing a room or playing favorite daughter. As if the point was not inconvenience, but position. My mother saw that I had heard it. Chloe, she said. Sharper now. Enough. But something had shifted. Tiny, but real. Serena was no longer standing neutrally. The hotel coordinator had opened the reservation file again. Talia had stopped looking at the floor. Even Denise, still holding that unfamiliar garment bag, looked less like a bystander, and more like someone who had suddenly realized she might be remembered as a witness. I stepped aside from the door, not back. Serena, I said, please have security remain on this floor. Vanessa stared at me. The coordinator swallowed. Ma'am, would you like me to note an access issue on the reservation? Yes, I said. And I want a printed itemized record of every charge, every room key issued, and every name added to this suite since check-in. My mother's expression cracked for the first time. Just slightly. But enough. Because innocent people object to accusations. People with a plan object to records. Vanessa pulled the robe tighter around herself. This is insane. I met her eyes. Then the paperwork will clear it up. Noah texted me at that exact moment. Where are you? Guests are seated. I looked at the message. Then at the women in front of me. Then at the second bouquet on my table. And the unfamiliar dress bag in my bridal suite. 40 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. I understood one thing with perfect clarity. My sister had not wandered into my mourning. She had arrived prepared. I did not answer Noah right away. That mattered, though I did not know how much yet. Later, I would understand that the first real break in their timing came from that one silence. People who build a plan around your reactions are always weakest when you refuse to perform the one they prepared for. Serena moved first. I'll get the printout, she said to the coordinator. Vanessa stepped fully into the doorway then, blocking the room with a smile that had gone brittle around the edges. This is still my sister's wedding day, she said to the hallway, as if she were the one protecting it. Can we stop turning this into a hotel audit? The coordinator hesitated, then glanced at me. It was not loyalty. It was procedure. That was enough. It's the guest reservation, she said. We can provide a room history. My mother took one step forward. This is a family matter. No, I said. It's a paid booking. That landed harder than I expected. Maybe because it was so plain. My mother had always done well in rooms where tone could replace facts. Documents made her impatient. Talia came quietly to my side. She did not touch me. She just stood there, looking at the robe, the bouquet, the garment bag. the door. In that small shift, I stopped being a difficult bride in a hallway and became a woman being displaced in front of witnesses. Noah called. I answered on the second ring. Hey, he said, breathless, distracted, already moving somewhere downstairs. Serena said there's a delay. Are you okay? I looked at Vanessa while I spoke. My sister is in my bridal suite wearing my robe. Silence. Then, what? My mother is inside with her. There's a second bouquet in the room. And a dress bag that doesn't belong to me. He exhaled once, slowly. I'm coming up. No, I said. That stopped him more effectively than panic would have. Chloe, stay where you are. Do not bring anyone. Do not try to calm this down. I need 5 minutes, and I need the front desk manager sent to the suite level. Another silence. No one knew me well enough to hear the difference between upset and exact. Okay, he said. 5 minutes. I ended the call. Vanessa gave a small scoff. You're making this uglier than it is. I finally looked straight at her. Then tell me why there's another bridal bouquet in my room. Her expression barely shifted. My mother answered again. And too fast again. We already said there was a delivery error. Then whose dress is in that bag? Denise opened her mouth, then closed it. I turned to her instead of Vanessa. That was enough to make her nervous. People like Denise could tolerate wrongdoing as long as they were not made to hold it in their own hands. It's not mine, I said. So whose is it? Denise clutched the hanger harder. Vanessa asked me to bring it up from her car. She said she might spill something and wanted a backup dress. Backup? For a wedding morning? In a garment bag. With bridal beading. No one in that hallway was stupid. Even the groomsmen at the far wall understood what that word was trying. And failing. To cover. Vanessa's voice sharpened. I said formal dress, Denise. But Denise had already done the damage. Not because she confessed anything dramatic. Because she placed effort where there should have been none. A car. A bag. A dress brought up in advance. Preparation has a sound when it enters a room. Serena returned with the coordinator and a woman in a navy jacket with a hotel badge clipped to her lapel. Front office manager. Miss Mercer, she said, calm and polished. I understand there's a concern about suite access. Yes, I said. I want the key log, the billing detail, and the list of any additional amenity requests placed against my room since yesterday. Vanessa laughed softly for the crowd again. Amenity requests? The manager checked her screen. There were several. My mother turned too quickly. What several? The manager looked up. Champagne service for 6, an added hair and makeup chair, and an early delivery authorization for floral intake at 7:10 a.m. The corridor went still again. I had ordered champagne for 3. Me, Talia, and Serena. 1 makeup chair. 1 bouquet delivery. Under my timeline. Who authorized the changes? I asked. The manager hesitated, professional caution returning. The notes say the bride's family requested them. My family doesn't have billing authority, I said. Whose signature is on the add-ons? She scrolled. There's no in-person signature. They were approved through the guest file using the reservation verification details. My card. My phone. My booking information. Vanessa looked at the floor for the first time. Not long, just long enough. Serena caught it too. When were the changes placed? She asked. The manager turned the screen slightly. Yesterday evening. Then 1 more note was added at 11:42 p.m., requesting privacy on the bridal floor and asking staff to direct all non-essential visitors to the alternate prep room. The hospitality room across the hall. The room my mother had just called larger anyway. I felt something cold settle into place. They had not improvised this in the morning. They had redirected me in advance. My mother folded her arms. This is ridiculous. Vanessa was helping, that's all. I looked at her. Helping whom? She did not answer. A little farther down the corridor, one of Noah's aunts had stepped out from the elevator and stopped. Then another guest. Then one of the photographers. Nobody came close. But the audience widened. Vanessa hated that. Not exposure itself. Loss of control over framing. She stepped forward like she wanted to take me by the arm and pull me aside, then thought better of it when she saw the manager watching. "This is not what you think," she said, lower now. "Mom thought I should have a private room too because of the family photos and things got mixed." "With a second bridal bouquet?" Serena asked. Vanessa ignored her. "You always do this, Chloe. You make one thing mean 10. The sentence might have worked on another day. Not this one. Not with my robe on her body and my suite in her hands." The manager cleared her throat. "There is one more notation." No one moved. It says, "Ensure room remains with approved party until ceremony transition. Bride may use alternate suite until called." The word bride sat in the hallway like broken glass. Not a guest. Not family. Bride. The manager looked embarrassed to have read it aloud. Serena looked furious. Talia closed her eyes briefly, then opened them and stared at Vanessa as though seeing her clearly for the first time in years. My phone buzzed again. Noah. I silenced it. Vanessa recovered faster than my mother did. "That's obviously just sloppy hotel wording." "No," I said. "It's somebody's plan written badly." For the first time, she lost her smile completely. That was when I noticed something else. Small, practical, easy to miss if the hallway had been louder. My overnight case sat by the suite wall, half-zipped. Not packed by staff. Moved by hand. One corner of the zipper had caught on a folded paper tucked into the side pocket. I knew that pocket. I kept receipts there when I traveled. I crouched, ignoring my mother's sharp inhale, and pulled the paper free. It was not a receipt. It was a printed run sheet from my wedding planner's shared timeline. But altered. My prep slot had been moved. My photo block had been shortened. The suite label at the top no longer said bride prep. It said family bridal access. Beneath it, in pen, someone had written, "V first for photos. They day." Not me, Vanessa. Serena took the sheet from my hand and went pale. "This is from my draft folder," she said. "An old internal version. It was never finalized." "How would it get in my bag?" I asked. No one needed to answer. My mother did anyway. People put papers in the wrong place all the time. But she was slipping now. She kept defending the mechanics instead of the act. That is what guilty people do when the shape of the truth is already visible. A flower girl came around the corner then with her grandmother, tiny basket in hand, white shoes flashing against the carpet. She stopped when she saw me still outside the suite. "Are you the bride?" she asked. Children do not understand strategic cruelty. They understand positions, doorways, who is inside, who is not. I smiled at her. "Yes." She frowned and looked at Vanessa. "Then why is that lady wearing your robe?" Her grandmother turned pink and tugged her hand, apologizing under her breath as she hurried her away. But the question stayed. Not because a child had spoken truth. Because everyone else had chosen not to. The manager straightened. "Miss Mercer, given the dispute and the reservation record, I can clear the suite now if you wish." My mother snapped before Vanessa could. "No one is clearing anything. The ceremony starts in 30 minutes. There it was again. Not concern for me. Not shame. Schedule. Optics. Completion. I turned to the manager. "Please rekey the suite. No one enters except me, my planner, and hotel staff whose names are logged." Vanessa stared at me. "You can't lock me out like I'm some intruder." I held her gaze. "You used my card, my room, my timeline, and my bridal floor access. Choose whichever word feels fairest." Her face changed then, not into remorse, but into something more honest. Anger at being stopped. That was the first sign I had needed all morning. Not that she had crossed a line. That she had expected to make it all the way across. The suite was cleared fast enough to tell me the hotel had stopped seeing this as family tension and started seeing it as a reservation problem. Once that happened, everything became easier. Staff entered with neutral faces. My robe was taken from Vanessa and returned to Serena. The second bouquet was removed. My Aunt Denise followed the unfamiliar garment bag out of the room, clutching it like she wished she had never touched it. My mother was the last to leave. Chloe, this is still your wedding day, she said, as though that sentence belonged to her. The manager held the door open. Ma'am, unless your name is on the booking, I need the room cleared now. My mother stepped into the corridor without another word, but the look she gave me was not hurt. It was calculation interrupted. When the door shut, the suite felt used in a way I could not mistake. My compact lay open on the vanity with a fingerprint pressed into the powder. One champagne flute had lipstick on the rim in a shade I never wore. My jewelry tray had been moved. My overnight case sat by the desk, half-zipped, no longer where I had left it. Serena crossed the room once, taking in everything. We reset the room, then we document. That brief stretch of silence still stays with me more than the argument outside. Talia straightened the hem of my dress bag. Serena checked the veil pins. I took one sip of water and set the glass down exactly in the center of the coaster because my hands needed one ordinary movement. Nothing dramatic happened. That was the point. The room was calm again, but it was not innocent. Then I saw the second makeup chair. It had been placed beside mine at the vanity, dressed the same way hotel staff prepared service stations, with a folded towel and a small bottle of water on the seat. A place card had been set in front of it and then turned face down. I flipped it over. Vanessa. Not handwritten. Printed. Serena took it from me. Her face changed immediately. This came from my event template. Did you make it? No. That mattered. Not because I needed another insult. I already had that. What I needed was proof that this morning had structure. Serena called her assistant and stepped into the sitting area. While she spoke, I checked my phone. Noah had texted twice. Where are you? Do you want me upstairs? I answered with one line. Check whether anyone asked the ceremony desk about license handling, witness order, or bridal entry changes. He replied almost at once. Doing it now. Serena came back a minute later, holding her phone low at her side. The card was printed from Mia's login at 6:18 this morning. Mia printed it? She says no. She left her laptop open in the planning office while she was downstairs loading escort cards. Serena paused. Your mother asked staff twice where the planning office was. That fit too neatly to ignore. I moved to the writing desk by the window, where the room folio envelope had been pushed half out from under the spa menu. Inside were the standard hotel papers, my booking summary, and a charge authorization slip that had not been there when I checked in. My name was typed into the guest line. Vanessa's name was typed into the authorized contact line. The signature was supposed to be mine. It was not. At a glance, maybe. From a distance, maybe. But not to me. The M was too stiff. The last stroke dragged where mine always lifted. Someone had copied the shape and missed the rhythm. I laid the page flat on the desk. Talia came closer. Is that what let them change things? Yes. Serena leaned over my shoulder. That's not family overstepping. That's forged authority. The timestamp at the bottom read 7:02 a.m. Before I had even reached the suite floor, a knock came at the door. Security had the key report and access history in a sealed envelope. The manager handed it to me and said quietly, There's one entry you should read first. She did not need to say which one. The log showed my digital access, Serena's temporary planner key, housekeeping, and 3 courtesy duplicate entries issued through front desk override between 6:41 and 7:05 a.m. Each one was tagged guest family. Then, beneath the access record, there was an internal note added at 7:12. Bride requests sister assist with dressing and ceremonial transition. I read it twice. Ceremonial transition. Not room support. Not family access. Not helping me dress. Ceremonial transition. The wording matched the hallway note too closely to be accidental. The alternate prep room. The privacy request. The second station at the vanity. Vanessa's name printed into the prep setup. These were not random favors collected by a pushy sister. Someone had been feeding staff the same idea in clean, useful phrases. Not replace me all at once. Slide her into my position, one procedure at a time. My phone rang. Noah. I answered immediately. I checked with the ceremony captain, he said. Your mother asked this morning whether a last-minute witness substitution would affect the license packet. I said nothing. He kept going. She also asked whether the bride's side signature sequence could be adjusted if there was confusion after the vows. After the vows, not before the ceremony. Not just getting Vanessa into photos. Not just stealing the suite. Paperwork. Sequence. Record. That was when the morning finally stopped looking chaotic and started looking designed. If I had cried loudly enough, or refused to come downstairs, or walked into the ceremony disoriented and visibly unstable, there would already have been a trail waiting for me. Hotel notes showing my sister assisting with bridal transition. A forged authorization giving her room-level legitimacy. Planner materials nudging her into bridal prep. Ceremony staff primed to treat her as a contingency if I became too emotional to proceed cleanly. Not some ridiculous switch at the altar. Something more believable, and therefore more dangerous. A retelling built in advance. Vanessa holding things together because I could not. Vanessa stepping in because the day was falling apart. Vanessa becoming the useful daughter in the official margins of my wedding. And if anything tied to room charges, vendor balances, gifts, or family-facing records got blurred afterward, those same margins would help carry her further. Mia arrived a minute later, pale and apologizing before the door was fully shut behind her. She had her laptop open already. I checked the print queue, she said. 3 items were printed from my account this morning. The vanity card, an altered prep sheet, and this. She handed Serena a single page. Front row adjustment. Under bride family placement, the names were listed neatly. Mother reserved, sister reserved. Then one final line. Bride alternate attendant position pending emotional readiness. Talia stared at it as if the page had slapped her. I took it from Serena and read it again. There it was. The whole instinct beneath the mourning. Stripped of excuses. Not just to embarrass me. Not just to provoke me. To reduce me in my own ceremony and make that reduction sound responsible. Pending emotional readiness. A phrase built to wound me if I protested and erase me if I didn't. The strings downstairs had started. Guests were seated. The hour was moving whether I was ready or not. Inside the suite, no one spoke for several seconds. Then Serena lifted her phone and photographed every page in silence. The forged authorization, the access log, the printed vanity card, the seating insert. One by one, she sent copies to herself, to me, and to a backup folder I knew she kept for vendor disputes. No speeches, no outrage, just preservation. That was the first hard proof. Not because one document changed everything. Because 4 different systems were now pointing in the same direction. The room record, the forged authorization, the planner materials, the ceremony inquiry. Independent pieces. Same intention. I put the papers back into the envelope carefully, as if neatness itself could keep the mourning from slipping any farther out of my hands. Talia looked at me. Why would they do this today? Because today gives them pressure, I said. If they tried this on an ordinary Tuesday, I could just say no. Serena nodded once. She understood immediately. Public schedule. Witnesses. Money already spent. Everyone expecting me to proceed. A wedding compresses resistance into minutes. Another ordinary sound drifted up from below. A chair moving, a door closing. Someone laughing faintly in the hall outside on their way to a celebration that still, somehow, belonged to me. I stood and reached for my dress. Serena watched me carefully. You still want to go down? Yes. Not because I was unaffected. Not because I wanted to prove composure. But because the ceremony was still mine. And I had finally seen enough to know the difference between a trap and a structure. A trap asks you to react. A structure can outlast the people trying to misuse it. I turned to Serena. Photograph everything, lock the copies, and do not confront anyone. Then I texted Noah one last time. Delay the processional 4 minutes. Nothing more. He answered almost instantly. Done. I put my phone face down on the vanity, lifted my veil, and let Serena pin it back into place. They had tried to enter my wedding through paperwork, access, and positioning. That meant I did not need a speech. I needed the record to survive the day better than they did. By the time I reached the chapel doors, the music had already restarted and the room looked exactly the way a wedding room is supposed to look when nothing is wrong. The flowers were perfect. The candles were steady. Guests turned toward me with soft, expectant faces. No one could see what had happened upstairs unless they knew where to look. I knew where to look. The ceremony captain was standing near the license table with one hand resting on the sealed packet. When he saw me, his expression shifted almost imperceptibly, not into surprise, but into correction. Noah had clearly warned him enough for my face to settle whatever confusion my mother had tried to plant earlier. Before I took my place beside Noah, I stopped near the side table and said quietly, "The packet stays sealed until I ask for it. No witness substitutions. No family handling it." He nodded at once. Understood. That was the first structural correction of the day. No scene, no announcement. Just one line quietly restored before anyone else could step across it. Then I walked down the aisle. The ceremony moved beautifully on the surface. And that was what made it so strange. Noah looked steady, but I could feel the tension in his hand when he took mine. My mother sat in the front row with her chin lifted in that composed way she always used when she believed appearance could still save her. Vanessa sat beside her in the cream dress, her hands folded too neatly. Still close enough to Bridal to bother me, and still far enough from it to sound deniable later. Serena stood farther back than planned, watching everything with her phone in one hand. I said my vows clearly. That mattered. A woman they wanted to recast as unstable does not stand in the center of the room and speak without shaking. I did. When the ceremony ended and the room turned naturally toward the signing table, my mother made her move. "Vanessa can help gather everyone for the witness photos," she said, already stepping toward the license packet as though she belonged near it. The ceremony captain moved first. He did not make a spectacle of it. He simply shifted in front of the folder and kept his hand on it. My mother stopped. Vanessa saw it too. So did Noah's uncle, who was standing close enough to notice that some expected handoff had just failed. I signed first. Noah signed after me. The witnesses we had chosen weeks ago signed in the exact order already listed. No substitutions. No adjustments. No confusion. When the packet was sealed again, I felt the day close around one protected fact. The legal center of my wedding had passed through their reach untouched. That should have been enough. But by then I already knew the suite had only been the entrance. While guests moved toward cocktail hour, Serena led me, Noah, and his mother into the small conference room the hotel had been using for vendor coordination. Once the door shut, the room lost its wedding softness and became useful. Serena laid everything out on the table. The forged room authorization, the duplicate key log, the vanity card with Vanessa's name, the altered seating insert, the internal hotel note using the phrase ceremonial transition. Noah read the pages in silence. His mother Evelyn read faster but more carefully. "This was planned," she said. "No," I replied. "It was structured." That was the difference. Serena opened the hotel folio history on her laptop and the pattern sharpened immediately. The privacy note on the bridal floor had been added the night before. The vanity card and altered prep sheet had been printed from Mia's login early that morning. The forged authorization had been inserted before I even arrived upstairs. Then came the room note naming Vanessa as assisting with dressing and ceremonial transition. After that, the second bouquet was accepted into the room file. One item could have been excused. Two could have been argued. 5 created sequence. Evelyn looked at the screen and said, "They were placing her inside the day." "Yes," I said. "Not at the altar. Not in some ridiculous theatrical switch. In the margins. In the room record. The prep flow. The seating language. The ceremony handling. The account history. Enough points of contact that if I reacted badly, or looked overwhelmed, or refused to cooperate on schedule, Vanessa could later be described as the stable one who had stepped in and managed things. And at a wedding, the margins matter. That is where access, money, and memory get recorded. Evelyn pulled the event ledger closer and opened it to the reconciliation section. Hotel incidentals, vendor balances, reimbursement notes, gift handling. A wedding does not end when the vows end. It rolls into paperwork. If Vanessa had been normalized as an authorized family contact, Evelyn said, your mother could have used that to muddy gift handling, charges, pickups, and vendor communication after the event. That was the full reveal. They had not just tried to humiliate me in the suite. They had tried to place Vanessa near every system that would still matter after the last guest left. Room access, event authority, ceremony procedure, gift flow, final balance, post-event pickup. Then hotel accounting sent up the charge file. Once we opened it, the pattern became even harder to deny. The champagne add-on, the second beauty station, the floral intake, the duplicate key issue, the room transfer request, different departments, same destination. Every page tied back to my booking, none properly approved by me. Noah looked at the stack and asked quietly, can this be treated as fraud? Yes, Evelyn said. At minimum, forged authorization and unauthorized use. I did not answer right away, because timing mattered now as much as proof. The wedding was still in motion. Guests were downstairs. Gifts were still being received. Staff were still working. If I moved too early, the room would scatter before the records were locked. If I waited too long, they might try to touch one more system. Serena understood immediately. We secure it first. So we did. She called the front office manager and froze all suite charges pending review, invalidated every duplicate key, and restricted all account discussion to me only with identification. Evelyn called the gift desk and blocked any family handling of the envelope chest or transfer log. Then she called her attorney's office so there would be a time-stamped record that forged wedding-related documents had been discovered during the event and preserved. That mattered because once a lawyer's office logs names, time, and copies, the day stops being a family argument and becomes a file. Then Mia sent one more PDF Serena had missed in the print history. It was a draft vendor release form for next day flower redistribution and suite item collection. Under emergency family pickup, someone had typed Vanessa Hale. My mother had not only planned for the ceremony, she had planned for the day after, when tired staff would trust whoever was already written into the paperwork. I looked at the pages spread across the table and finally understood why I no longer felt confused. Improvisation is slippery. Systems are not. They had touched too many of them. And now the structure was speaking for me. The moral line of what they had done did not become clear to me in the conference room. It became clear 20 minutes later, during cocktail hour, when the wedding was still moving around us in soft light and polished glass, and nobody outside our small circle yet understood how much of the day had already been touched. I had changed nothing about the schedule except what needed protection. Photos began. Guests drank champagne. My veil was adjusted twice by a stylist who knew better than to ask questions. The visible structure of the wedding held. And because it held, people relaxed. That was useful. Relaxed people speak more carelessly. I was standing near the terrace doors with Noah when my cousin Leah approached me holding a small white box. I think this is yours, she said. It was in the bridal suite sitting area, but Vanessa told me not to bring it in because it would upset you before the ceremony. I took the box from her. It was not mine. Inside, wrapped in tissue, was a small silver baby bracelet with a blank engraving plate. The kind people buy when they want to turn hope into a keepsake before anything has happened. Beneath it was a card from a jeweler. The handwriting on the envelope was my mother's. For Vanessa and the next beginning. Noah saw it at the same time I did. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then Leah, already uncomfortable, added quietly, your mom said she wanted to give it to her before the reception, but only if the mourning went smoothly. Mourning, not engagement. Not future. Mourning. That was when the cruelty finally changed shape for me. Until then, everything had been about access, position, control, and paperwork. Ugly, calculated things. But this was different. This was not about the wedding systems. This was about what my mother believed the day should symbolize and who she believed should carry that symbolism forward. I had told my family 3 years earlier, after 2 surgeries and 1 final specialist appointment, that I would never be able to carry a pregnancy. I had not told many people, just the ones I still thought belonged inside my life. My mother had cried when I told her. Vanessa had held my hand across the table and said, "Then your life will just look different, not smaller." Now there was a bracelet in my hand meant for my sister, to be given on my wedding day if the morning went smoothly enough for her insertion into it to feel complete. Noah took the box from me and closed it. His voice was very quiet. "She planned this with that in mind." "Yes," I said. "That was the moral reveal. Not that they wanted to humiliate me. Not even that they wanted Vanessa folded into my wedding. They were building this while still accepting my trust, my money, my openness, and one of the most vulnerable truths I had ever given them. Vanessa had not just stolen a room. My mother had not just manipulated hotel staff. They had used the most private wound in my adult life as the invisible argument beneath the whole morning. Not because anyone had said it out loud. Because they did not need to. They had already decided that a wedding without the promise of children left room for another daughter to stand closer to the center. That explained things I had not understood before. Why my mother had become strangely attentive to Vanessa over the last 6 months. Why she kept calling her the one who still knows how to build a family. Why she insisted Vanessa be included in vendor tastings, dress appointments, seating conversations, even when I thought she was just being overbearing in the usual maternal way. Why she had pushed so hard for family continuity in speeches and photos. Why every practical intrusion had been dressed in the language of support. It was not random closeness. It was replacement dressed as concern. And the ugliest part was that it had not started this morning. It had been forming while I still trusted them enough to invite them into fittings, spreadsheets, menu choices, and private fears. A few minutes later, that understanding deepened in the smallest possible way. My flower girl, Emma, came up to me near the cake display, holding one of the ribbon wands from the ceremony. She leaned against my side and asked very softly, "Are you happy now?" Children do not ask that question unless they have seen something adults hoped would pass unnoticed. I bent toward her. "Why?" She twisted the ribbon once around her fingers. "Because the pretty lady in cream told me maybe today was hard for you because families have to change when ladies can't have babies." The air around me seemed to narrow. Noah heard it. So did Evelyn, who had just stepped into earshot. Emma's mother turned white and hurried over, apologizing immediately, but she did not need to. The damage had already been done in the only way that mattered. Vanessa had not kept the cruelty inside the private circle of adults. She had let it spill downward into a child's hearing, casually enough to sound like wisdom. I smiled at Emma and touched her hair once. "Thank you for telling me." Her mother led her away, mortified. Noah looked toward the bar where Vanessa was standing with two of my aunts, laughing at something. One hand wrapped around a champagne flute she had no business looking comfortable enough to hold. "That's it," he said. But Evelyn shook her head once. "Not yet. We still need the room to know what she is before she starts defending herself." She was right. A moral betrayal is hardest to prove when it stays private. Once it reaches a child, a witness, or a room full of people who can compare what was said to what was done, it starts to harden into something others can recognize. That recognition came from another direction before the hour was over. Talia found me near the photo wall and handed me her phone. "You need to see this." It was a screenshot from Vanessa's private social account. One she forgot Talia still followed. The post had gone up the night before and had already been deleted. But one of Talia's friends had sent it to her that morning because she thought it was strange. The photo showed the hotel skyline from Vanessa's room balcony and a glass of champagne with my wedding invitation partially visible on the table. The caption read, "Some women are chosen for the dress. Some are chosen for the future." No name. No direct accusation. Nothing obvious enough to post publicly if challenged. But layered over everything else, it was devastating in a way blunt cruelty never could be. It was anticipation. It was self-positioning. It was Vanessa standing just outside my wedding, already narrating herself as the more rightful woman inside it. Talia took the phone back slowly. "I didn't show you before the ceremony because I thought it would ruin you." "It wouldn't have ruined me," I said. "It just would have confirmed the timing earlier." By then, the story had stopped being about one outrageous morning and become something more disturbing. They had not only prepared logistics, they had prepared meaning. My mother had supplied the family logic. Vanessa had supplied the vanity. Together, they had built a version of the day in which my infertility made me symbolically weaker. My composure could be recast as fragility, and Vanessa could be floated near the center as the sister who still represented continuity, fertility, family future. All the soft words cruel people hide behind when they want to move someone out of place without naming the violence directly. That was the real cost of betrayal by family. Not that they know where to hurt you, that they know how to make the wound sound reasonable. I should say here that nothing explosive happened for several minutes after that. That is important. Real collapse does not always arrive on cue. Sometimes it is preceded by the ordinary. A waiter passed with crab cakes. Someone asked Noah about the honeymoon. My new ring caught the terrace light when I reached for water. Across the room, the band tuned quietly before the reception entrance. And in the middle of all that, I saw my father sitting alone at a side table with his untouched drink. He had been silent all morning. That silence had angered me earlier, but now it drew my attention in a different way. He was not relaxed like the innocent guests. He looked like a man trying not to be noticed by the consequences of something he had failed to stop. I walked over and sat across from him. He did not say congratulations. He looked at the silver box in my hand, then at me. And for a moment he seemed older than he had that morning. "She shouldn't have brought that," he said. "Brought what?" He gave a bitter, tired exhale. "Any of it." That was not enough for forgiveness. Not even close. But it was enough to tell me he knew more than he had admitted. "How long?" I asked. He rubbed one hand over his mouth before answering. "Your mother started talking about Vanessa helping with the wedding months ago. Then helping more. Then being included in certain records. I told her it was inappropriate." "Included how?" He looked away. "She kept saying you were too emotional about details. That you needed support. That Vanessa was better with practical things. Then, after your doctor appointment." He stopped. I waited. He finished anyway. "After that, your mother started talking like marriage should still mean legacy. Even if yours wouldn't look the way she imagined." There it was. No anger in his voice. That would almost have been easier to hear. Just cowardly accuracy. He had known the thinking. He had watched it form. He had done what weak men in families often do when a woman's position is being slowly dismantled. Objected privately, then attended publicly. I stood up. He reached for my wrist for a second, then let go before he touched it. "I didn't know she would go this far." "No," I said. "You just knew the direction." I left him there with his untouched drink. By the time I crossed back toward the reception doors, I understood the moral structure of the day more clearly than I understood the logistics. The forged forms mattered. The access logs mattered. The seating changes and authorization slips mattered. But beneath all of it was something simpler and uglier. They had decided my private loss made me easier to move. And they had made that decision while smiling through fittings, tasting cake with me, adjusting my veil, and accepting the trust of being called family. That kind of knowledge does not make you louder. It makes you colder. When I reached Noah again, he looked at my face once and understood that something inside the story had changed. "What now?" he asked. I looked across the room at my mother and sister standing beneath the floral arch I had paid for, talking as though they still belonged safely inside the evening. "Now," I said, "they lose the right to explain themselves first, because evidence can prove fraud. But once motive is visible, the room stops waiting to be told how to feel." They escalated before I had to, and that was what broke the second half of the night open. The reception had just settled into its formal rhythm. Guests were finding their seats, servers were placing the first course, and the locked envelope chest was being moved from the gift table toward the hotel's accounting alcove for later reconciliation. Most people would not have noticed that movement. I did, because by then I was watching systems instead of flowers. So was my mother. I saw her leave her table before the salads were fully set down. Vanessa followed a step behind in that same cream dress, still trying to look both innocent and central at once. They were not coming toward me. They were heading for the service corridor, where the gift log and release forms were being held. Evelyn saw it too. She crossed the room without haste and intercepted them just outside the alcove entrance. From where I stood, I could not hear the first words, but I could read the shape of it clearly enough. My mother was moving forward as if she had authority. Evelyn was blocking her without touching her. Vanessa had already lifted her hands into that practiced posture of reasonable concern. Then my mother made the mistake she always made when private control failed. She turned it public. "This is exactly why I was worried Chloe would become difficult tonight," she said, pitching her voice just high enough to reach the nearest tables. The sentence did not stop the room, but it changed it. Heads turned. Conversations thinned. A few people began listening while pretending not to. I started walking toward them. "We are only trying to make sure the family gifts are handled properly," my mother continued, now loud enough that several tables could hear her clearly. "She's been overwhelmed all day, and now his side is freezing out her own mother." That was the escalation. Public, social, and psychological. Time to collide with the only part of the evening where money, family standing, and guest attention all met in the same place. By the time I reached them, Serena was already coming from the planner's table with a folder in hand. Talia had stopped near the dance floor, phone held low but ready. Denise was frozen beside her chair. Two of Noah's cousins had gone half upright at their table. The room had not exploded, but it had tilted. Evelyn did not move from the alcove entrance. "The gift log is restricted," she said evenly. "That has already been made clear." My mother gave a short laugh meant for the audience. "Restricted from the bride's own family?" Before anyone else could respond, Vanessa stepped in with perfect timing. "We have done nothing but help Chloe today," she said, her voice trembling in exactly the right places. "We've tried to keep things smooth, and somehow we're being treated like thieves." That was the narrative they wanted. Not innocence, but injured reasonableness. Not denial, but concern misunderstood. She still did not know how much I had. She only knew there were witnesses. And in rooms like that, the first calm story can travel fast, unless someone interrupts it with something stronger. So I did not argue with her. I turned to the accounting captain, who had just come from the alcove carrying the locked transfer case against his chest. "Has anyone other than me or Noah been authorized to access the gift log, envelope chest, or release forms?" I asked. He answered immediately. "No, ma'am." "And was there an earlier attempt to assign emergency family pickup authority to someone I did not authorize?" A pause fell over the nearest tables. "Yes," he said. My mother cut in at once. "That was only a backup contact in case you disappeared into tears again." Again, she said it too easily, as if the room had already accepted enough of her framing to absorb the cruelty underneath. Instead, several faces changed all at once. Noah's aunt stopped pretending not to listen. Denise looked down. Two women from my side of the family, both of whom had smiled at my mother an hour earlier, went visibly still. I spoke before anyone else could fill the silence. "I did not disappear," I said. "I was locked out of my paid bridal suite while my sister stood inside wearing my robe." That landed cleanly because it was specific. Rooms believe specifics. Vanessa flushed and tried to step over it. "You are turning a misunderstanding into—" "No," Serena said, arriving beside me. "There was no misunderstanding." She opened the folder without drama, and that was what gave it weight. No shaking hands, no accusations, just documents, carried into a social scene by someone with nothing personal to gain from the truth. "I have the room access log, the forged authorization, the altered prep materials, and the duplicate key history," she said. This was coordinated. My mother turned on her with a sharpness she could no longer hide. "You are a wedding planner. Stay in your lane." Serena did not blink. "My lane includes event records, staff access, printed materials, and unauthorized use of my team's login." That changed the category of what people thought they were watching. Until then, some of the guests might still have hoped this was just ugly family behavior. The second, an outside professional stated document tampering in a steady voice, the room started reorganizing itself around fact. Vanessa tried one last pivot. "Even if mistakes were made, this is still Chloe's wedding," she said, now turning toward the room instead of me. "I don't understand why she wants to ruin it in front of everyone. It was clever, and on another night it might have worked. It cast me as the one breaking the atmosphere they had already damaged. It invited the room to protect the event, instead of examining the structure beneath it. But they had escalated too late, and by then they were already speaking against what people had actually seen. I had walked down the aisle on time. I had spoken clearly. I had signed cleanly. I had not collapsed. Their version no longer matched the visible record. Evelyn understood exactly what the room needed next. She did not flood it with every page we had. She took one document from Serena's folder, the cleanest one, the one that needed the least explanation, the vendor release form. She handed it to the accounting captain. "Please read the emergency pickup name." He glanced down. "Vanessa Hale." Noah spoke for the first time then, and because he had used almost no words all evening, the force of them landed harder. "My wife did not authorize that." A murmur moved through the room. Not outrage. Recognition. Recognition is worse for people like my mother, because outrage can be redirected and soothed. Recognition cannot. Once people understand what they are looking at, control leaves quietly and does not come back. Vanessa must have felt it happen, because she escalated too. "This whole day has been unstable," she said, looking now from table to table. "Everyone saw it. She was late, she was confused, she needed me upstairs, and now she's punishing us because she can't handle pressure." It was reckless. She had moved beyond what the room had actually witnessed, and that made her vulnerable in a way she did not realize until it was too late. The flower girl's grandmother rose from her seat 2 tables away. She was not dramatic, not involved, and not trying to be part of the conflict, which was exactly why what she said mattered. "No, dear," she said to Vanessa with devastating politeness. "What I saw was the bride outside a locked room while you were inside wearing her things." Then she sat back down. That was the moment the room changed. You could feel people withdrawing from my mother and sister in real time. Chairs shifted. Eyes moved away from them and toward me. Serena, Noah, Evelyn, the accounting captain, the folder, the hotel staff now lingering discreetly near the corridor. No one announced a side. They simply stopped standing on the wrong one. My mother felt it too, and anger made her careless. "She is still my daughter," she snapped, pointing at me. "And if someone has to step in when she is not strong enough, that is family, not fraud." The sentence fell dead, because she had finally said the real thing aloud, stripped of the polished language she had used all day. Not support, not continuity, not helping. Step in when she is not strong enough. No one rescued her from it. Not Vanessa, not Denise, not my father, who had risen halfway from his chair and then done nothing at all. I looked at my mother and understood that the rest of the evening had already tipped beyond her reach. She had taken a hidden structure and translated it into motive in front of witnesses. From that point on, she no longer needed to be accused. She only needed to be heard. Still, I kept my own voice level. "You tried to enter my wedding through my room, my event file, my ceremony paperwork, and my post-event pickup records," I said. "Do not call that family." Then I turned to the accounting captain. "Please remove both of them from all gift, vendor, suite, and release access lists tonight. And note the restriction in writing." He nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." That detail mattered. Spoken boundaries can be denied later. Written ones stay. There was one more small moment then. The kind that makes a room understand the truth more deeply than any formal statement can. Emma, the flower girl, looked up at her mother and asked in a whisper that carried farther than whispers should. "So the bride was telling the truth?" Her mother squeezed her hand and answered, "Yes." That was the emotional shift. Small, simple, and impossible to spin. Financial access was closing. Social support was draining away. And the story they had tried to launch in the middle of my reception was beginning to collapse before dessert had even been served. The band had stopped playing by then, not because anyone told them to, but because they understood the room had become something else. My mother made one final attempt to reclaim authority. You would humiliate your own family like this in front of strangers? I looked at her, then at the documents in Serena's hand, then at the locked transfer case against the accounting captain's chest. No, I said. You arranged that yourself. This time, no one in the room mistook my answer for cruelty. They heard it for what it was. A record. After that, the room did not explode. It separated. That was worse for them. No shouting broke out. No one rushed forward. No dramatic relative tried to seize the center and negotiate peace. Instead, the guests did what people do when they suddenly understand they have been standing too close to something rotten. They created distance without announcing it. Chairs angled away. Conversations resumed in smaller, safer circles. The two aunts who had been closest to Vanessa minutes earlier did not leave with her when she stepped back from the corridor. Denise quietly moved to another table. My father stayed standing near the edge of the room, but no one looked to him for direction. The public collapse had begun, and it was happening in the most final way possible, not with noise but with withdrawal. My mother understood it too late. She's making you all uncomfortable on purpose, she said, turning toward the nearest tables, as if the room were still available to her. This should have stayed private, but the sentence landed weakly because privacy was no longer hers to invoke. She had tried to use the reception itself as leverage. She had chosen the public setting when she believed it would help her. Once that failed, asking for privacy only sounded like someone trying to get back behind a closed door. Noah did not speak. He simply took my champagne glass from the passing tray, handed it to me, and stayed beside me. That small act mattered more than any speech he could have made. He was not debating them. He was standing with me as if the question of position had already been settled. Across the room, Serena was speaking quietly to the hotel manager and the accounting captain. I saw the manager make notes, then nod. Two staff members approached the gift alcove, checked the updated authorization sheet, and closed the service door. One of them removed an old release clipboard and replaced it with a fresh restricted access form. That was the next collapse. Not social. Procedural. My mother and sister were being removed from the event's working systems in real time, in front of enough witnesses that they could never later claim they had stepped away voluntarily. Vanessa saw it and tried to recover where my mother no longer could. She approached two of my cousins with wet eyes and a lowered voice. The exact posture of a woman trying to build a smaller sympathy circle after losing the room. I could not hear her first words, but I saw their faces as she spoke. At first uncertain, then polite, then closed. One of them, Leah, glanced toward me, then back at Vanessa and said something brief before walking away. The second cousin followed her without touching Vanessa's arm, without offering comfort, without even pretending to remain neutral. That was social collapse in its purest form. No accusation, no rescue, just people deciding not to be used. My mother made a final turn toward my father then, and for a moment, I thought she might still be able to pull something from him. He had been silent all day, and silence had always been her favorite kind of ally. She walked over, said something sharp and low, and waited. He looked at her. Then he looked across the room at me, and he sat down. That was all. But it was enough. He did not defend her. He did not stand beside her. He did not repeat the family line. In another family, that would have been cowardice. In ours, it was a public refusal to lend his weight to her version of events, and my mother felt the meaning of it immediately. I watched it hit her face like a private door closing. Vanessa was the one who cracked next. "This is insane," she said louder now, because she no longer had the room's attention and wanted to force it back. "I didn't steal anything. I was trying to help because Chloe was spiraling." The word echoed farther than she meant it to. Spiraling. Not overwhelmed. Not stressed. Spiraling. It was too clinical. Too rehearsed. Too revealing of the language they had likely been using all morning when I was not in the room. Several guests turned fully toward her now. Not because they believed her, but because the ugliness had finally become undeniable. Serena stepped forward with the folder still in hand. "Do you want me to read the 712 note aloud?" she asked. Vanessa went still. Serena did not wait for permission. She opened the file and read in a calm, professional voice. Bride requests sister assist with dressing and ceremonial transition. Then she looked up. No bride requested that, she said. The line cut cleanly through the room. Vanessa's face changed first, then my mother's. It was not outrage this time. It was something colder. The recognition that an invented narrative had now been pinned to a sentence, a timestamp, and a witness willing to read it aloud. Evelyn added nothing dramatic. She simply handed the forged room authorization to the hotel manager. Please keep this with the incident file, she said. Incident file. Those two words did more damage than shouting ever could have. They moved the night one final step away from family argument and into documented misconduct. The manager accepted the page at once. Of course. My mother heard that and lost the last of her control. You're filing an incident report at my daughter's wedding? She demanded. No, Evelyn said. At hers. That was the public collapse. Not a slap. Not a scream. Not a cinematic exit. A correction so precise the room could not look away from it. My daughter's wedding. No, hers? Possession restored in one word. Around us, the guests had fully stopped pretending this would smooth itself over. Noah's uncle moved away from my mother and toward our table. Denise sat down beside one of Evelyn's friends rather than return to her own sister. Talia, who had spent the entire day holding herself together for me, finally exhaled and lowered her phone. Even the band members stayed still beside their instruments, waiting, because everyone could feel that the room had already chosen its center. Then Emma, the flower girl, walked over to me with one loose ribbon trailing from her wand. Do you still get to keep your wedding? She asked. Children ask the purest procedural questions. Not who was right, not who was cruel, who keeps what belongs to them. I bent and touched her shoulder lightly. Yes, she nodded, satisfied, and went back to her mother. That tiny exchange did something no adult statement had fully done. It reduced the entire night to its moral truth. I was not fighting for atmosphere. I was not defending my ego. I was keeping what was mine from people who had tried to move into it by stealth. My mother looked around the room one last time, searching for someone to stand with her. No one did. Vanessa opened her mouth as if to try again, then seemed to realize that every word she had left would only make the shape clearer. She set down her champagne flute on a passing tray without drinking from it. Her hand was shaking now. The financial collapse came next. Quiet and almost invisible unless you knew what to watch. The accounting captain returned with a revised authorization sheet. He handed one copy to Serena, one to the hotel manager, and one to Evelyn. Vanessa and my mother were no longer listed anywhere on access, pickup, suite contact, vendor release, or gift handling. Their names had been removed from the systems they tried to enter. That mattered, because reputation can sometimes be repaired inside families. Written exclusion from process is harder to undo. Noah glanced at the updated sheet, then at me. Do you want them asked to leave? It was a fair question. A tempting one, too. But by then, I understood something more useful than removal. Being forced out can make people look persecuted. Staying after the room has already withdrawn from you makes you look what they truly were. Unwelcome by consequence, not by command. So I shook my head. No. The answer unsettled my mother more than a demand would have. She had prepared for rage, expulsion, perhaps tears. She had not prepared for a room in which she could remain physically present and yet hold no authority, no sympathy, no access, and no believable story. That was the deepest part of the collapse. To stay and be irrelevant. The band resumed a minute later, softly at first. Guests sat down. Servers lifted plates again. Reception life returned, but it did not return around my mother or sister. It flowed around them the way water flows around chairs that no one plans to use. I watched Vanessa realize that too. She stood beside my mother, under a floral arrangement I had paid for, wearing a dress chosen to echo a role she had failed to enter. And neither of them had anywhere left to stand that meant anything. That was when Leah crossed the room and placed the small white jewelry box, the one with the baby bracelet, into my hand in front of both of them. I think this belongs with you now, she said. She did not say more. She did not need to. My mother saw the box. Vanessa saw it, And both of them knew, from the expression on Leah's face alone, that whatever private logic they had built around my supposed weakness was no longer private and no longer persuasive. I set the box on the table beside my seat without opening it. No speech, no confrontation, no explanation. The structure had already done enough. By the time the main course was served, the room had fully reordered itself. My mother and sister had lost financial access, lost procedural footholds, lost neutral witnesses, lost their family cover, and lost the ability to narrate what had happened before the records did. Even my father, with all his weakness, had chosen absence over alliance. That too was a verdict. I sat at the center of the reception beside my husband, with the updated authorization sheet in Serena's folder, the incident file in the hotel manager's hands, the gift systems locked, and the room no longer asking whether I was overreacting. They knew, and once a room knows, collapse is only a matter of time. By the end of the night, no one argued with me again. That was the quietest part of the victory. The reception continued because I allowed it to continue, and once that became clear, the room relaxed into a different kind of order. Not the artificial order my mother had tried to force over the day, but a cleaner one. The speeches went forward. Dinner was served. The band played. Our first dance still happened. And when Noah's hand settled at my waist under the warm wash of the lights, I felt something I had not felt all day. Not relief. Restoration. Not because the damage had been undone. It had not. My mother had still chosen my wedding morning as a place to test whether I could be displaced. My sister had still walked willingly into the role prepared for her. Some things, once seen clearly, do not return to their former shape, but the structure had held. That mattered. The gift chest remained locked. The updated authorization sheet stayed in Serena's folder. The hotel manager kept the incident file. Every questionable charge was frozen pending review. Every duplicate key had been invalidated. The release forms for the next morning were reissued with only my name and Noah's. By the time dessert was served, the event no longer contained a single working system my mother or sister could touch. They were still physically present for another hour. That was my choice. I did not have them thrown out. I did not need to. Expulsion would have made them dramatic. What happened instead was more final. They remained in the room while the room continued without them. Guests stopped going to their table. My aunts stayed elsewhere. The people who had once been willing to interpret my mother's behavior as intensity or family stress no longer made that effort. Even waitstaff approached their side of the room with the polite distance reserved for guests attached to a problem already noted internally. At one point, I saw Vanessa stand as if she meant to come toward me, then stop when she realized there was nowhere between us left that belonged to her. She sat again. My mother tried to speak to my father twice. He answered once, briefly, then looked away. That, from him, was as close to a public admission as he was capable of giving. There were two small moments I remember more vividly than the speeches. The first came when Emma, the flower girl, passed our table on her way out. Sleepy, and holding her mother's hand. She looked up at me and asked, "Did you keep your room too?" I smiled at her. "Yes," she nodded, satisfied in the simple way children are when the world has been put back into the right hands, then rested her head against her mother's arm and kept walking. The second came much later, after the last formal dance, when Serena sat down beside me for the first time all day and handed me a slim envelope. Inside were copies of the key log, the forged authorization, the altered printouts, the vendor release form, and the accounting restriction notice. Nothing dramatic, just paper. "I made 3 sets," she said quietly. "One for you, one for the attorney file, one in secure backup." I looked at the pages and then back at the dance floor where the reception was still moving under soft light. "Thank you," I said. She gave a small nod. "You won before dinner. The rest was just the room catching up." That was true. Not because I had overpowered them emotionally. Not because I had delivered some perfect line in public. I won the moment the records stopped bending and started holding. Once that happened, everything else followed on its own. The guests, the staff, the withdrawal, the silence, the loss of access. The collapse of their version. Near the end of the evening, Evelyn came to me with the final accounting update. The gift log had been sealed without incident. No envelope discrepancies. No unauthorized release requests. No unapproved charges would clear before review. The florist had reissued the next day pickup form with only Noah and me as contacts. The hotel had preserved the incident notes and flagged the forged authorization for formal follow-up on Monday. Financial control had closed. Procedural control had closed. And with them, the future my mother had tried to create inside my wedding quietly disappeared. I never opened the little white box again that night. It stayed where I had placed it near my seat until the reception ended. And when we finally prepared to leave, I handed it to Serena and asked her to put it with the rest of the retained materials. Not because it was evidence in the same way as the forged forms, because it was proof of meaning. The documents showed what they did. The bracelet showed why. When the last guests began to leave, my mother approached me one final time. Vanessa stayed behind her, pale and smaller somehow, stripped at last of the confidence she had worn all morning like borrowed silk. My mother's voice was lower than it had been all day. "You're really going to keep this going?" I looked at her for a long moment. There were 100 things I could have said. About trust. About cruelty. About what kind of mother uses her daughter's private grief as a reason to move another woman closer to the center of her life. But by then, explanation would only have served her. It would have let her pretend this was still a conversation. So I gave her the only answer the day still required. "I'm not keeping anything going," I said. "I'm keeping what's mine where it belongs." She opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, there was nothing she could do with the sentence. No tone to correct. No emotion to weaponize. No audience left to persuade. The systems were closed. The room was done. Even Vanessa did not try to rescue her. They left 10 minutes later without saying goodbye to the remaining tables. I watched them go only long enough to know they were truly leaving. Then I turned back to Noah, who was waiting beside the ballroom doors with my wrap over one arm. And that look on his face I would later remember with more tenderness than the flowers, the band, or even the cake. Not pity. Not apology. Recognition. He knew then what I knew. I had never been replaceable. The suite had been mine because I booked it. The ceremony had been mine because I stood in it. The record had been mine because I protected it. And the future waiting after that night was mine because I finally understood that foundation and permission are not the same thing. My mother had spent months trying to move my sister into the edges of my life through access, paperwork, symbolism, and soft family language. But edges are not foundations. They only look powerful until the structure refuses them. When Noah and I left the ballroom, the hotel corridor was quiet in the way buildings become quiet after they have finished holding too much emotion in too little space. Upstairs, the bridal suite was sealed under my name again. Downstairs, the files were locked. In Serena's bag, the copies were preserved. By morning, the flowers would begin to come down. The tables would be stripped, and the music would be gone. But the record would remain. So would the marriage. So would the corrected file. So would the fact that when they tried to enter my life through the margins closed. I did not look back toward the ballroom a second time. I did not need to. The structure had already spoken for me.